VC. Going to start off today with some Merle Haggard and talk about some country roots. Want to start off with this record. Same train, a different time. Merle Haggard. Merle Haggard sings the great songs of Jimmy Rodgers, 2-record set. This little bit interesting. I've got several Merle Haggards on CD, and I've had this record on CD for a long time, or this music on CD for a long time. It's one of my favorites. So I thought I should get this record on vinyl, and it's not all that easy to find. It's not real hard, but I found a copy on eBay, and it wasn't a record deal or anything. It was just a regular kind of garage sale eBay person, and so I paid $10 for this, and I got it. And I know a few of you folks have talked about this. It came in one of them big padded envelopes, and there were a couple little pieces of cardboard in there for stiffeners, but not even half the size of this record. And you can see it's a little warp looking and so forth. The cover's not in great shape. I thought, oh man, I got nothing here but just trash. And like happened so many times, I pull the records out. The records are near mint. So I go ahead, or they're in excellent condition. So I go ahead, and I wanted a good listen. I cleaned them up real good. I put them on. They were first presses. That breath of life was there. The music was outstanding. Old Merle was right there in my living room. And of course, I love this Jimmy Rodgers music. This is a gatefold. Country Music Hall of Fame for Jimmy Rodgers, and he's got his trained hat and so forth on. And this record is 1969. And when I got this a couple months probably before Merle died, with the idea I was going to do a video. But when he passed away, I wasn't ready to do the video. I didn't want to just rush something out because he had passed away. But he was such a talented person, and really did a lot of different stuff. When you look into him a little bit, he was really talented as well as what he did that we enjoy. 2-record set on the Capitol label. Originally, I was just going to talk about that record and the music because I liked it so much. But I thought, well, that's the perfect opportunity to talk about Jimmy Rodgers. Most of VC folks probably don't know much about Jimmy Rodgers. It's not the later Jimmy Rodgers that was the pop singer, or the even later one that was a kind of a more modern blues guitar kind of guy. I've got the complete works of Jimmy Rodgers, everything he recorded on CD. I don't know how many that is, 8, 9 CDs, and I've got duplicates of some of the stuff. I've had those for a long time, but just because I wanted to do this video, I thought I should have one vinyl of Jimmy Rodgers. Got the record in the back, doesn't matter. You maybe could read from my yellow sticky here. This is a German press, RCA German press. Excellent. None of that makes any difference. Jimmy Rodgers died in 1933, so obviously all of his records are on 78, and when you get the newer CDs, where in some cases they've probably worked from the masters, since he was a RCA artist back then. And use the modern technology to clean them up. And I haven't even listened to this record. It probably sounds pretty good, but in the case of listening to old 78s, I think modern cleaned up versions on a CD probably always going to sound better. Jimmy Rodgers, born 1897, died in 1933 of tuberculosis. He started recording in 1927, so he only had a 6-year recording career, and he recorded well over 100 tunes, most of which he wrote. Now, the one on the Merle Haggard there, Waiting for a Train, that was one of Jimmy Rodgers' biggest hits, but he didn't actually write that song. That's a great tune, and for example, I got a CD, Dr. John, where he gives it a New Orleans blues kind of style, completely different than the country style or the Merle Haggard or whatever. A lot of people have done that tune. It's been a good tune. Jimmy Rodgers wrote lots of really good tunes. So, for example, one of the records I've mentioned is one of my favorites, Rory Block, the early tapes. She does a tune called Why Should I Be So Lonely? I love that tune. It's one of my top 10 favorite albums of all time. Well, for a long time, I never bothered to look and see who wrote it. Well, Jimmy Rodgers wrote it. So then I had some other CDs, other music, had some tunes that I really liked on them, kind of get a certain flavor of them. So I go look them up. They were all Jimmy Rodgers. So, and I'd been familiar with him, but not that familiar. So when I found out all these tunes I was really digging that he wrote them all, well, I ordered the box set of all the CDs, and I probably already had a couple CDs. Jimmy Rodgers was considered the father of country music, which he was, but not just country music. He had influence on the blues, and of course the blues had a big influence on him. A lot of tunes that he did were blues or blues type of things, and he was in a lot of all of the kinds of music. So, for example, one of the tunes that he recorded, because he happened to be in the RCA studio, well, guess who was in the studio across the hallway? Louis Armstrong and his wife, Lil Hardin Armstrong, who was a piano player and a composer. So Blue Yodel number 9 was unattributed on the record, but everybody knows it's Louis Armstrong on trumpet and his wife, Lil Hardin, playing the piano with Jimmy Rodgers. That's the kind of respect that really great artists had for each other. Another one, I looked a little bit, but I didn't find it. A similar situation. He was in the studio, and a black jug band was in the studio next to him. I don't remember if that was the Memphis Jug Band or which one. I couldn't go look it up. So he recorded a track with, I'm just going to say Memphis Jug Band. It was one of the famous jug band records, and I got that record someplace. But I actually looked up the Louis Armstrong one here and listened to it the other day. So there was a lot of interaction between the music, and so it's not just the country guys, the blues guys too. One little interesting tidbit here about this music. He died in 1933. In 1933, Jimmy Rodgers records were 10% of the total gross revenue of RCA Victor. Now, of course, that was in the Depression, so times were tough and so forth. So when Jimmy Rodgers was gone, it's not just bad for music, it wasn't very good for RCA either, because 10% of their gross revenue came from his records. Very interesting. Happened to be, I wasn't familiar with half-price books. I've heard some of you folks mention that, so I Googled it. There's not that many stores in California, Northern California. There's only a couple. There happens to be. There's one about 30 minutes from me. So Memorial Day, I went over there. Perfect timing. They were having 20% off, but I picked up this record. Merle Haggard, Willie Nelson, Still in the Shrink, for about $4.50. I'm not going to talk about these records. We're mainly about the Jimmy Rodgers today, and I want to show a few records. Also picked up this record, Still in the Shrink. Merle Haggard, My Love Affair with Trains. See a model railroad stuff down here. It's very interesting. Model railroad on the back. Um, these are good records. Somebody else who was a big somebody else who was a my screensaver came on. Somebody else who was a big train fan, had a big model train layout out behind their house, was Frank Sinatra. Okay, got a couple soundtracks to show that fit into this. Picked these up at Half Price Books. Outstanding condition, probably about $3. The original music soundtrack from Bronco Billy, Clint Eastwood. Okay, Bronco Billy, probably one of my top 10 all-time favorite movies. A lot of big Clint Eastwood fans probably don't even recognize the title. It was one of Clint's favorites. Has Merle Haggard on it, has Ronnie Milsap on it, but in here there's a tune co-written by Merle Haggard and Clint Eastwood called Barroom Buddies. It's featured in a big barroom brawl and so forth, several places in the movie. It's a good tune. I really like it. So here's old Merle in the Bronco Billy movie, and I was real happy to find this in just excellent condition for like $3. Same stack, another Clint Eastwood soundtrack. Honky Tonk Man soundtrack from Honky Tonk Man. Now, I'd watched this movie a long time ago, but doing a little bit of research about Jimmy Rodgers on Wikipedia, it said, this Honky Tonk Man movie was loosely based on the life of Jimmy Rodgers. So I rented the movie and watched it again, and it's okay. It's a pretty good movie. I mean, it's entertaining. It has a bunch of different country people on here. It has Linda Hopkins, a really great blues singer who sang a lot of other kinds of things. And the interesting thing here, this is kind of a traveling country guitar picking kind of player guy. But about the only thing this movie had in common with the life of Jimmy Rodgers is Clint here was dying of tuberculosis, and of course Jimmy Rodgers died of tuberculosis, and otherwise doesn't have much to do with it, but it really perked my interest. And again, for about $3.50, still in the shrink. Boy, happy to find that record. Move my paper here. The Bronco Billy was from 1980. The Honky Tonk Man was 1982. Not really country, but I happened to pick up this record at the same time. Good time to show it. Johnny Cash is real country. Johnny Cash, Rockabilly Blues. Near mint. Less than $4. Has a little tiny tear on there. I'm not familiar with this record, never seen it before, but it's a good record and a little bit different than the typical Johnny Cash. And you can see from the picture, this is a fairly early, this is 1980. So he was still a fairly young guy then. Okay, same store, Half Price Books, brand new sealed record. Was $13, so I paid 20% off, a little over 10. Brand new, 2011, 180 gram. Wanda Jackson, pioneer of rock and roll, Rock Your Baby. Of course, she was country. She did the rockabilly, and she had a few crossovers and those kind of things. She's still around today and doing stuff. And not quite country, but I thought, well, rockabilly, Johnny Cash rockabilly, that was good to show there. Okay, the video today is kind of about country music. I'm not a huge country fan, but I like a little country. I got two records I'm going to show here. One of them's real country, one of them's not. But we're primarily just talking about the artwork, the album covers. George Jones. I am what I am. Look at that outfit. Yep, that's some Rio country. Picked up this record at the same place, and this is 1975, and I picked up this record. I like the music, but I picked it up for the album cover. It's near mint. Wanted to show this. Folks been picking up some Glen Campbell, some of them making funny. Yeah, they're most always in the dollar bin. I had to pay $4 for this, but this is, look at that. Man, that's you don't see those kind of pictures much more on the country people. This is a great album. It's highly embossed. So the cactus, his thing up here, this little stuff down here, all of this stuff is raised probably nearly a 1/16 of an inch. Was a real expensive process to make this. I listened to this the other night and I'd made a couple notes here. Well, whether you like Glen Campbell or not, Rhinestone Cowboy was one of his big hits. So sound quality is important to me. I'm going to be doing in the future a video about audiophile records. So I look on the back, mastered at the mastering lab. So when you see that, you know, as long as this thing hadn't been stamped a million times, you're going to get a great sounding record, and this was a great sounding record. And again, you don't see the Western country and Western music where they look like this anymore, do you? Okay, so I hope you enjoyed something a little bit different today, folks, and see y'all down the trail.